Reddit Ask Me Anything. I am a former drug dealer who paid his way through college and was ultimately arrested. Ask me anything. Personal details will try to be kept at a minimum for now. Proof has been verified by the mods for all the haters. Where did all the heroin originally come from? Did you have any insight into how the Mexicans got it into the country? They have a lot of ways to get it into the country, from tunnels to boats and human mules. That was 1 or 2 steps above my pay grade though. Just how big were you on campus? Did you live large in the dorms? I was probably the biggest drug dealer on campus. By the time this started, I lived off campus yo. You know boy, I really appreciate your honesty in this situation. Even with all of the douchebags who are calling you douchebag, you keep with your beliefs and I respect that. Thank you for telling your story. Stay up. Thank you. The level of interest has been fantastic. I have been at it for a couple hours and they are still flowing. I'll keep this going as long as I can hold out. So what are your opinions on The Wire? It is probably the only realistic portrayal of drug dealing I have seen. It's fantastic. The college scene works a bit differently, but that is how it was around the cities I grew up in. How did you convince the pharmacist to start selling you pills? We knew each other from way back. He found out I was selling ecstasy and coke and he approached me and mentioned that he had recently been promoted to manager. He had been taking small quantities before that. Since you've been on Reddit, which is more addicting, Reddit or heroin? Reddit in terms of raw usage, heroin in terms of quitting, haha. Profit margin on heroin? Do you think all or certain drugs should be legalized? All of them. Both of my brothers are dope fiends and I cry sometimes thinking about the trouble that they've been in and the time in jail they've spent because we treat this as a criminal problem rather than the health problem that it is. This is coming from somebody who has seen both sides of the fence. Where did you go to school? What was your major? BTW, I'm your first follower on Twitter. I hope I forever earn a place in your heart for that. I was originally a computer science major and am now a business administration economics double major largely due to this story. I don't feel comfortable posting a location. Edit. For clarity and location. Did you ever get depressed when you stopped selling and all the highs that in itself brought? I talked about this in one of my NA meetings. It was miserable not being that guy anymore. Not being a boss. Not being recognized. Not skipping the lines at the nightclub or being able to do or buy what I wanted. I felt so alive selling drugs. I know that sounds bad but it's true. Did you ever use the drugs? I'd like to say that I never used the drugs. That's the cool thing to do in movies and rap music, right? Never get high on your own supply. But the truth is that I suffered from pretty severe heroin withdrawal when I quit selling and using. It's too easy to pass the time by using when you are bored and have reached a certain point. Hell, at least you're honest about it. How did you manage to get through college while on heroin? In the period you were a user yourself. Did you use a lot? It's not nearly as debilitating as everyone expects. And after a while, a regular or small amount just gets you normal. I feel more active and talkative after getting high. The early user nod out or dong in the dirt moments stop happening as frequently, or you just know yourself and do a get well dose and then get loaded after class. What did you study in college? And did it have an effect on you turning to drug dealing? I came out to college originally hoping to study computer science and get away from the shitty environment I grew up. Unfortunately, it was more a part of me than I realized. I ended up switching to business administration economics later as I realized that I had a knack for it. I've done a lot of charity work and things like that. Most of that is due to the drug dealing. It encouraged me to change my major and my thoughts on karma moved me into charity work. I always wondered how people who made a lot of money selling drugs managed to push so much product. Do you have several hundred clients? Or sell to a few dealers who would sell to others? I suppose for heroin you would just need a number of daily users. But what about the rest? Did you ever meet any chemistry students making high quality drugs and selling them? I had probably 20-30 clients. When people hear that number it is always smaller than they expect. But with dope they are daily clients. Also it is deceiving because I force those people to pick up for their friends that I don't want to meet and some of them are dealers and resellers. As far as the rest, Even 20-30 is decent because of the profit margins, but you do need more the less you force them to resell for their friends or the less dealers you have working for you making their own customers. My 5 or 6 dealers I had on my team all had their own clients, so a sale is a sale is a sale. I have a chemistry student friend who cleaned up my tar heroin one time into pure powder heroin. Basically finishing up the process started, but we never did it long term like we talked about because he was concerned about me and how big everything was getting and if this might cause a rash of ODs from people who don't listen. So maybe he saved me, I don't know, but he was the only person I knew that could do it. I knew others selling other drugs, but what level of chemical involvement I couldn't tell you. Yeah, me and some geek dope fiend friends of mine bought a crap load of tar once and made powder. Duckman. When I was an addict, I never jumped IV, only smoked it, a whole shitload of it. Yeah, it was expensive as a mother ducker for a small time habit, and I had quite a ducking tolerance. I snorted a small, I'm talking seriously small, minuscule, and I was high as duck. I would never try to sell that shit. You'd leave a trail of bodies in your wake if people are used to Mexican tar, lol. Tar can be just as strong. It's generally just a purity issue. When we did the conversion, we got a yield of about 0.8 for every gram, considering losses. That was pretty good and shows how quality the tar was. We just only did it once. Did you have a moment early on in your career, run-in with the cops or life-threatening situation, that caused you to consider stopping before you got to the position you were at? If so, what ultimately made you continue up the corporate ladder? There was my initial arrest that I talked about in a previous comment, and I can go into more detail if you are interested. This whole thing took place over probably 4 years, going from ecstasy to coke to the pharmacy connect and ultimately seeking out dope. The closest I ever came to just saying duck this was when some Eastsiders ran up in my house with knives and my girlfriend was there. If somebody from the crew I worked with hadn't been there, that may have turned out a lot worse. I kept my girlfriend away from my place as much as possible after this, and I had a permanent live-in enforcer who I had put on after he got out of prison. He was related to one of the Mexican families I worked with and sold dope to. How did you handle that kind of money? $25k a month. You can't just walk into a bank and deposit that. We spent it as fast as we made it in many cases. I reinvested a lot of it into other ventures and more drugs. I did deposit some of it. I paid tuition and rent for me and my girlfriend. I bought a car. Bought a second car just for work. Lots of things like vacations and nice clothes. But basically we just went through it. A lot got seized at the end in product and cash. I made off with a little bit and have been living off it and watching it dwindle. Maybe that's why I started these memoirs. It's just another hustle. I'm confused. You say you got busted in October, and that you were a kingpin. How are you not in jail right now, let alone doing this Ask Me Anything? The tale is called The Rise and Fall of a Self-Proclaimed College Kingpin. I take a slight self-depreciating jab at myself, but I made about $25,000 a month on average, and I answered previous questions about how the arrests and plea bargain went. Lenient sentencing and no priors, plus a life outside of drugs where I went to college and did charity work and such. I got 3 years felony probation and a state-ordered drug rehab program, including NA meetings and counseling sessions. At the end of the 3 years, assuming no more trouble, my charges will be reduced and expunged. How did you do deals? In your own home, on the street, at the buyer's location of choice, cell phone or face-to-face to initiate a deal? We had a dope spot initially where people could come to the apartment. After it got hot, we switched to delivery only and a couple things like dummy cars and other shit. Burner cell phone changed every 2 weeks to avoid wiretaps. Though I don't know how likely they were, as there were no recorded conversations at our court discovery that I knew about. Maybe that's because of the precautions. Maybe it's because it's more difficult than I know. Which of the 3 happened to you? Get your arm amputated, go to prison, or take a double-ended dildo in the ass? I took a dildo in the ass. My girlfriend is a freak and I am always up for new things. Don't knock it till you try it. Best blowjob ever. Assume the amputated arm is from shooting too much dope. With proper needle technique and a constant supply of new needles. Thank you Amazon.com. That's not really an issue. I said I would never use a needle. I did anyways. But I got off the needle and stayed off about 6 months before I got arrested. Even I didn't like that stigma. Did you carry a firearm? If so, ever use it? Did your Mexican associates offer you protection? Or did your Mexican associates put you in uncomfortable situations? Or were they professional and businesslike? I did not carry a firearm. I did keep a combat knife of sorts around the house after an incident I talked about before where some rival Mexicans ran up in my house while my girlfriend was present. After that incident, my connect provided me with a guy for muscle, and this was probably the point where I started doing more Mexican sales because the enforcer wanted in on sales as well. The Mexicans I worked for were always very businesslike. My primary connect at the end couldn't have been any older than me and was very clean cut with a nice home and a BMW 7 Series. That muscle guy is in jail now as part of the raids in October, but I am close with his family and I stay with them when visiting. So as you can see, they were very businesslike. The lame associates anyways. But there is a certain amount of drama that happened just because of the association. Taxes to the local lame boss, rival gangs who don't listen to directives, etc. My connect was Mexican mafia lame, but I was white. I wasn't required to pay taxes. But I lived on the west side and the west siders worked with and protected me, but the east siders ignored the mafia and caused me drama all the time. Either they claimed I owe taxes or they just thought they could take advantage of the soft white boy. You seem to have made a lot of money on a daily basis, which means you were probably holding large amounts of cash. Did anyone ever try to rob you Omar style? Do you own a firearm to protect the stash? Further, did you attempt to launder any of the money? If so, how? We spent money as fast as we made it in those days. I wasn't buying a house or anything like that, so laundering money wasn't as essential. New car and vacations and name brand clothes and suits and dresses and such were the norm. Parties and all cash all the time. There was one incident where I was ran up on at knife point. I talk about it in a few locations around this topic. I didn't ever own a firearm. I was probably unwilling to fire it, and that it is just a bad combo. I did eventually keep a knife around, and this Mexican guy who was originally sent to me after the incident ended up living with me permanently, and I became close to him and his family. He was actually half Mexican half white but all West Sider, and he grew up with only the Mexican side of his family because the father abandoned them. How did people find you? I built up a pretty large clientele through other drugs first. Some of them made the switch. The biggest of those were my pill clients. Almost 100% of them made the switch to heroin. If you go to any college campus, the pill clients are not hard to find. In addition, my supply was Mexican, and many other Mexicans started picking up from me because it was simple, and the traditional Mexican suppliers require much larger upfront purchases than the average dope fiend can handle. So my clientele was all over the place. The two major groups were well-to-do college students and poor Mexicans. How the hell did you get away with 3 years of probation and drug rehab? Either you're a very lucky individual or you're lying about how big you got, bro. I've been in this game a long time and I have watched countless friends get 5-10 years for a lot less than what you're talking about. Did you only get charged for a fraction of what you were usually handling on a given day? I just can't imagine someone raking in $25k a month. Being involved with organized crime and having that much of hardcore drugs in their possession and not getting jail time doesn't make sense to me. If this was in my city, you either got caught up for a small amount of what you usually dealt with or you snitched. No grown man gets probation when they have blown up that big. When I got arrested, I had a fraction of this. Their case was built on informants that they did not want to take the stand. I explained this. I also explained that however my former partner got caught with a quarter pound of the dope and he got more serious charges including trafficking across county lines, but even he got the same type of deal and reduction with expunge. Some states are more lenient than others, especially when you have other things going on in life, and rehabilitation and re-entry to the normal world is expected rather than the exception. I was a student, good GPA, did charity work, and sending me to prison would have just made me a career criminal. At the end of my probation, I was eligible for a drug rehab program and the record is to be expunged. Same is true of my former partner. What was the most amount of cash in one transaction that you made? I never sold more than $1,000 in one transaction that I can think of. However, on the flip side, I've bought a half pound at a time for $6,400. I had a lot of consistent buyers and a few resellers dealers in the $200 $500 every couple days range. I eventually stopped doing the $20 $40 sales too and found a nice middle ground. What do you think about the people you sold to? They represented a very wide spectrum of people. Some were dope fiend thieves. Many were college students or poor Mexicans. Some had trust funds and college funds. Others stole from their girlfriends. I had this one group. 4 of them all from the same company who came to my house on their lunch breaks and fixed or got well. Some came back after work too. They were respectable business people at a legit tech company. It was funny. They kept it from each other for a while. Even their manager. Then eventually they all found out about each other. What is the profit margin on the drugs you sold? How much were you making per pill or per gram? How does the process work? Do you buy drugs from some larger organization then move them to your market, or did you manufacture as well? How does one make the connections and go about buying large sums of heroin etc? On pills, a 30mg oxycodone instant release sells for about $15 where I live, and I gave my pharmacist $5 each. The dilaudid 8mg sold for a similar $15 or sometimes $10 for $120, and I gave my pharmacist $4 each for those. High quality dope sells for anywhere from $120 $150/g or $30 44.2 in my location, and my first connect was for $80/g. Though as I moved up and got introduced to higher level people, that price dropped to $40/g, and remember my market was $30 44.2, and my prices stayed similar. Dope and pills are where the money is. Margins aren't bad on coke and such. $25/g wholesale and $50/g retail. But dope fiends have to come back every day. They don't feel like they have a choice in the matter. The second part is the combination of good luck and just networking. It's not easy for a white guy in this particular field. The Mexicans control the heroin trade where I live, and they don't trust white guys. My first connect for dope was one that sought out because I couldn't get enough pills to keep up with demand. It was a white guy who had gained the trust of a Mexican woman and was basically middlemaning it for me. He got arrested and they realized that I was the one moving most of his product. They approached me and I got my first Mexican connect. After my first arrest, they realized I could hold my mud, not tell dirt on everyone, and my connect spot approached me, and that's how I got down to near Mexican level prices. $35 40/gram. Because normally even the white guys who can buy from Mexican suppliers don't pay the same as Mexicans. So, yeah, luck, balls, and willingness to protect your own, I guess. Thanks for the reply. How do the drugs and money change hands? Do you shop up at Mr. Mexican's door with a wallet full of hundreds and place a box full of drugs in your trunk? Or by the end did you even touch the product directly? At the beginning, I went personally to all deals and I stuck ounces of heroin in my butt cheeks. They were upped repeatedly. Don't worry. But yeah, by the end, I very rarely touched the dope. I had runners and a partner I trusted to meet the connect. I was almost mostly selling to smaller dealers who used to be my customers. I did very few individual sales, even through my partner in the end. He had made a spot within the fuse box in the engine bay of his car, so at some point he would stop shortly after leaving the connect's house at a gas station and move the what was now a £1/4 per re-up from on his person to this spot, attached to the fuse box, and he would drive with it under the hood until he got home. We'd move it into the apartment nonchalantly at some point and chop it up for sale. Every dealer I have ever known has hid the re-up under his hood. The police are onto this, right? The biggest assumption is that you are being pulled over because they know what you are doing. Usually it's just a regular traffic stop. 2. You carry in your ass until you get away from the connect to make sure nobody was waiting right away. And lastly, we had created a compartment underneath the traditional spots. But in the end, if they know what you are doing, the dogs will find it. It's to prevent accidental discoveries. I've also swallowed 12 grams of dope once following a certain nudie massage. Edit. Wrapped up and puked back out. Dude, you have bad luck with nudie massages. One could say that, but then one wouldn't know about the girl that my best friend gave me for my 23rd birthday. He convinced this Japanese exchange student that in America best friends swap wives, and thus began the best nudie massage birthday gift, and more of my life. How much money did you make? How much do you still have? Did your family know? My family found out after my arrest. I admitted everything to them. My mom was distraught because she was worried that she had a third dope fiend son, but we've become closer over this whole fiasco. She really knew deep down the whole time because of the money I was sending home. Like I said, by the end the average was probably about $25,000 a month for my portion, and I took care of me and my girlfriend very well. But we spent a lot of it as soon as we got it. It was a lifestyle that we weren't used to. A lot of it also gets reinvested from time to time in product. The police seized most of what was around when I got arrested, which was more product than cash. I made off with about $10,000 that has been slowly dwindling down that my girlfriend and I have lifed off of. How did you end up getting arrested? My pill supplier was a pharmacy manager who used an insurance scheme to make pills disappear from the pharmacy. They were investigating him, and the first time I got arrested, I got caught up in that whole investigation. I was getting a nudie massage when the police showed up and I was arrested for possession and paraphernalia. I ultimately kept going because those charges were expunged, but by then, people were talking and they had a snitch who said I was selling everything. A larger investigation was launched and ultimately my organization came down in a series of raids, and the case was mostly made by snitches aka informants. Did you roll on your supplier? As far as this investigation went, I was the top of the supply chain. Only myself and one other person knew the supplier and neither of us rolled. We tipped off everyone involved. We are in tighter now than ever and have access to bigger things even, but we both chose to stay away. Edit. They tried to get us to turn on each other as well, but we both basically tried saying the other had nothing to do with it. This man is my best friend. Bro, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.